Continuing with the line-wise explanation of the poem Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson, we'll first look at lines 28 to 32. The text reads like this: "And while it were for some 3 suns to store and hoard myself, and this grey spirit yearning in desire to follow knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bound of human thought." Ulysses has just reflected that he only has a short time left to live. Still, he insists that the best way to spend what remains of his life is not simply to try to prolong it. He could keep himself alive for a short stretch of time, some 3 suns or years, if he were willing to hunker down and do nothing but store and hoard his life the way the people of Ithaca hoard goods in line 5. But this would be a vile, disgraceful way to live, Ulysses insists. To hoard something implies greedily keeping it, holding it back, rather than using it and putting it to some useful purpose. For Ulysses, life is only worthwhile when it shines in use, as he says in line 23. And so he will freely expend his energy and spend what remains of his life in action, even if that action might shorten his life. Ulysses affirms that his greatest desire is to continue traveling and learning as he did in his younger days. He hadn't seen and known much in his earlier travels, and now he still wishes to follow knowledge like a sinking star. This simile indicates Ulysses' ambition, but possibly also his recklessness. When stars fall or sink, they appear to fall into the horizon. The horizon, as he indicates in line 20, is precisely where Ulysses would like to go. But the term sinking is ominous for a man wanting to set out on a sea voyage. If Ulysses is too ambitious, it may be his ship that sinks, prematurely ending his life. This ominous note will return later on in the poem. Still, Ulysses wishes to make the journey. One reason that Ulysses is careless about preserving his life may be that he no longer identifies himself with the biological life of his body. Ulysses refers to himself as this grey spirit. It is the body, specifically the hair, that goes grey with age. But Ulysses, employing the device of Synecdoche, calls himself a spirit. He ultimately identifies with the immaterial, transcendent part of himself, his soul, which is ageless, rather than with his graying, aging body. And in line 32, he indicates that he wishes to explore not just the physical places where no human has been, but the ideas that no other human has contemplated. Knowledge beyond the utmost bound of human thought. His ambition is to go further than other human minds have gone. As Ulysses will indicate later in the poem, when the body's strength fails, a new kind of heroism must be found in the mind and heart. Beyond the utmost bound of human thought is the end of the sentence, and the end of the first section of the poem, and its regular meter, repeated sounds create a sense of confidence. Conclusion. Beyond and bound alliterate with the initial B sound and share consonance with the closing ND sound. They also create a subtle internal slant rhyme. There is then more consonance in the repeated N at the end of human. These repeated sounds tie the entire line together, creating a sense of finality. The percussive repeated T in utmost and then in the final word thought has a determined emphatic sound conveying the firmness and confidence Ulysses feels in uttering this final line. He will not be deterred. Lines 33 to 38. The text goes like this. This is my son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I leave the sceptre and the isle, well loved by me, discerning to fulfill this labor by slow prudence to make mild a rugged people, and through soft degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. Ulysses now turns from describing his memories and desires to describing his son Telemachus. In Homer's Odyssey, Telemachus grows up hearing about his father's greatness and is eager to measure up to Ulysses as he becomes a man. In Tennyson's poem, it is not clear how far he has succeeded. It is possible to read this section as a straightforward affirmation of Ulysses' love and respect for Telemachus. But it is also possible to find a degree of tension in the relationship caused by their different personalities and values. Ulysses, conscious of his old age, begins by noting that Telemachus will rule Ithaca when he is dead. He clearly indicates affection for his son, saying he is well loved, although the passive voice here distances Ulysses slightly from the act of loving his son. He then characterizes Telemachus's personality. Telemachus is a man of slow, thoughtful, deliberative judgment, characterized by discernment and prudence. A prudent person is someone who thinks through a situation carefully before acting, weighing each factor before making a decision about what to do, who is cautious rather than reckless. These are admirable qualities, and Ulysses does have admiration for them. He expresses no hesitation about leaving Telemachus in charge of Ithaca when he is gone. However, Telemachus' qualities do not seem to be those that define the greatest, most heroic kind of man in Ulysses' eyes. Ulysses favors daring and boldness, pushing limits, where Telemachus seems more inclined to caution and dutifulness, respecting limits. Telemachus does not scorn the uncivilized people of Ithaca as Ulysses does. He patiently dedicates his time to working to educate them and teach them to perform useful and good works. If he is working to make the people mild and gentle, he is likely a mild man himself and not someone who would find delight in battle as Ulysses does. Even the sounds of this section are mild. These are euphonious O and U sounds in slow prudence, through, subdue, useful, and good. and soft I and F sounds in well loved, fulfill, labor, slow, mild, soft, and useful. These gentle sounds reinforce the reader's sense that Telemachus is meeker, less heroic than his father. Lines 39 to 43. Most blameless is he, centered in the sphere of common duties, decent not to fail in offices of tenderness, and pay meet adoration to my household gods. When I am gone, he works his work, I mine. This section continues to suggest that there is some distance in Ulysses' relationship to Telemachus, in particular because they are such different kinds of men. Ulysses goes on to say that Telemachus is most blameless. This is certainly a positive quality in keeping with the remote possibilities of discernment and prudence already noted. But it may be significant that Ulysses says that Telemachus is blameless rather than pointing out reasons why he should be praised. In line 15, Ulysses proudly remembers being honored, admired, and praised by all the people he met on his travels. Telemachus, it seems, is not the kind of outstanding individual who does great deeds that win glory. He simply avoids doing anything that would be shameful. When Ulysses later says Telemachus is decent not to fail in his offices, the phrase could again be read in two ways. In itself, it is a positive trait, but it also falls short of achieving outstanding success and glory in some arena. Ulysses certainly expresses admiration for his son, but the admirable qualities he describes are quite different from the heroic greatness he aspires to himself. Most blameless and decent not to fail are both forms of understatement expressing something less strongly than you would expect. One would expect a father to praise and show pride in his son, but Ulysses offers Telemachus only a limited form of praise. Sometimes understatement is most humorously to give extra emphasis to a quality, but here it is used to call attention to the qualities Telemachus lacks as well as to the qualities he does possess. Telemachus is an upright man, but not a very imaginative or daring one. The following lines reinforce this impression. Telemachus is very good at fulfilling the tasks of his role, the common duties of a ruler. His dedication to duties and offices shows that he follows the rules and set guidelines for behavior. Rather than pushing the boundaries of human achievement, as Ulysses wishes to do, Telemachus does what others expect him to do. These differences in personality may be why the two men do not seem to share a close relationship. Ulysses concludes the section saying, "He works his work, I mine." Even though Telemachus will inherit Ulysses' official role as ruler of the island, Ulysses does not really see them as sharing the same role. Ulysses shows respect for Telemachus, but also sees him as a very different man with a different mission in life. Telemachus is dedicated to his duties to the people, but Ulysses does not take such duties to be his true purpose. As the next section will describe, his heart lies in exploring. The Caesura in the middle of the phrase, by creating a gap in the sound, reinforces the sense of emotional gap for distance between the two men. We will continue in the next session.